The next day, Harry was the first to wake up. He had stayed awake half the night wondering about what his future would be now that he was in Ravenclaw instead of Gryffindor. He quietly slipped out of bed and began pacing the room, trying to come to terms with this unexpected turn of events. But he didn't have too long to wander around, though, as Philip saw him and said, "We gotta get going, Harry. Eleanor, Duncan, and Candace are waiting for us, and we can't afford to be late to class. Remember, we're supposed to be in Ravenclaw." Feeling overwhelmed and unsure of what his future in Ravenclaw would hold, Harry reluctantly followed Philip's reminder to get ready for class. As he quickly dressed, his mind raced with thoughts of what his new house would mean for him and his friendships with Eleanor, Duncan, and Candace. With a deep breath, Harry steeled himself for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead in Ravenclaw. Within a few weeks, as the days passed by swiftly, Harry, Philip, and Eleanor found themselves engrossed in the vast collection of books and resources housed within the well-stocked school library, eagerly diving into the world of literature and knowledge. Even though Harry was smart and liked to study physics, he never liked to read for enjoyment. That was mainly because there wasn't much to be expected of him, save for being known as the boy who lived. As such, he was treated by many as a hero, not as a normal boy. Well, that was going to change. A few weeks after the sorting ceremony event, which had ignited much excitement and uncertainty among the students, Harry found himself in another encounter with the notorious Draco Malfoy. This time, Malfoy, accompanied by his loyal companions Vincent Crabbe and Gregory Goyle, deliberately intercepted Harry along with his friends Philip and Eleanor in the corridors leading to the library. Malfoy, sneering in his trademark manner, addressed Harry by remarking, "So, the rumors are indeed true, aren't they? Harry Potter, the renowned boy who lived, now embracing his identity as a Ravenclaw." His tone was filled with a mix of astonishment and mockery as he added, "I must admit, witnessing you display genuine Ravenclaw qualities is quite unexpected, to say the least. Yeah, you may think it's weird, but Harry could have gone into Slytherin and be stuck with you," Eleanor said with a laugh, reflecting on the intricate ways in which the Sorting Hat could have altered Harry's destiny at Hogwarts and the potential dynamics that might have unfolded between the characters if different choices were made during the sorting ceremony. "Barlow, isn't it?" Malfoy snapped as he looked at Eleanor, his tone laced with disdain and superiority towards her lineage. The biggest blood traitor family in the wizarding world, perhaps even bigger than the renowned Weasley family, marking your place among those who defy our pureblood heritage with every step you take, every word you speak, his words dripping with the venom of centuries-old prejudices. "I'd watch it if I were you," Philip warned him, emphasizing the importance of staying cautious in the given situation. "A mudblood?" Malfoy laughed scornfully, his sneer cutting through the air. "I am genuinely amazed that they allowed someone from your tainted family line to set foot in this prestigious establishment, given your unsavory background. You might want to rethink that, Malfoy," a voice echoed from behind them. Turning around, everyone noticed Patrick Harvey glaring at Malfoy. Harry frowned as he looked at the two kids standing next to Patrick. The girl had messy brown hair, and the boy had bright red hair. Harry thought to himself that they weren't the type of people who would be friends with Patrick. Or did Dumbledore recruit them to act as friends for Patrick? With a groan of disdainful disgust, Malfoy continued, "And what do we have here? Some miserable young orphan who's nothing more than a cheap imitation of Harry Potter. How pathetic." His buddies, enjoying in his cruel words, burst out laughing as Malfoy said, "I've heard stories about devoted fans naming their children after Harry Potter, but I never imagined that anyone would mold their own child into an inferior replica of Harry Potter. It is truly a sad sight to behold." Malfoy's sardonic ridicule permeated the air, heightening the tension, and casting an evident sense of dejection over the setting. "That's Patrick Harvey," Harry tried to say, but Malfoy cut him off quickly, focusing his angry comments to Patrick in an attempt to impose supremacy. With a tone full of contempt and disdain, he said, "Listen up, mate. I don't like wasting my time with people like you, especially when you're pretending to be someone that you're not." This created an awkward silence that was only broken by the tension in the room, preparing the audience for an inevitable altercation, in which egos collided and tempers flared. "You don't know the story," Patrick snapped, his frustration evident in his voice. However, Malfoy retorted with a sneer, coolly dismissing Patrick's words. "Come back to Hogwarts when you're done playing pretend. Your ignorance is showing." Just then, Patrick, fueled by a surge of raw emotion, delivered a swift and resounding slap across Malfoy's face, his words dripping with a warning so ominous yet intertwined with a hint of suppressed power. "I'd watch it if I were you, for the depths of my capabilities are far beyond your wildest imagination." "Patrick, please don't antagonize him," Harry cried out as Malfoy's eyes narrowed. The tension in the room was palpable, and Patrick's bravado seemed to hang in the air like a charged spell. But Patrick wasn't one to back down, especially when he had the chance to hit back at everything that had tried to destroy him. He leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. "I've faced worse than him, Harry. Trust me." Everyone in the hall held their breath, waiting for the next move. Malfoy's cheek still stung from the slap, and his pride was wounded. But Patrick's resolve was unyielding, and in that moment, everything hung on a knife's edge. Just then, a voice cut in, yelling, "That's enough of that." The voice belonged to Professor McGonagall, her stern expression leaving no room for arguments. In her crisp Scottish accent, she commanded silence with authority and a flicker of disappointment, making it clear that she would tolerate no misbehavior at all. To Malfoy, she said firmly, "Go to the infirmary, Madame Pomfrey will see to your injuries." As Malfoy was being forcibly led away, his eyes blazing with hostility, he couldn't resist muttering a chilling warning to Patrick Harvey, "You're going to regret this, Patrick Harvey." Despite the tension in the air, the students looked on, sensing the gravity of the situation unfolding before them. McGonagall's stern voice reverberated in the room as she addressed Patrick directly, expressing her disappointment at his actions. "I don't know what you were thinking," she began, her tone a mix of concern and disapproval, "but that was definitely not a very wise decision to make." "He was making fun of Harry," Patrick began, but McGonagall was stern. Her eyes narrowed as she spoke firmly, emphasizing her point. "I won't tolerate any misbehavior in this school." With a distinct authority in her voice, she continued, "Now, go straight to my office and wait for me there. We will have a thorough discussion about your actions," her tone leaving no room for arguments or excuses. The red-haired boy, with fiery determination in his eyes, stood his ground and firmly expressed his thoughts. "But that's not fair, Professor. Malfoy was just being a rude jerk, like he always is." His voice resonated with a mix of frustration and defiance as he tried to justify his actions. However, Professor McGonagall, maintaining her stern demeanor, shook her head in disappointment as she chastised him, "And you have just earned yourself a week of detention, Mr. Weasley." Her disappointment was palpable as she continued, "I was hoping that you would be better behaved than your twin brothers Fred and George, but that's apparently too much for me to ask." She couldn't hide the hint of resignation in her voice, knowing the mischievous nature that often ran through the Weasley family. "But you heard what Malfoy said the girl with the messed-up brown hair, her expression a mix of frustration and defiance as she glanced towards McGonagall. The stern professor's response was swift and unwavering. "Not another word, Miss Granger," she declared firmly, putting an end to the conversation. Her voice held no room for negotiation, as she continued, "I will have no further arguments from you. Go straight to my office now," her eyes locking onto Hermione with a steely gaze. As Patrick and the other two children walked away, Harry turned to him with a solemn expression and said, "I'm sorry I got you in trouble. It wasn't my intention to cause any harm." Understanding Harry's sincerity, Patrick reassured him, saying, "He was making fun of you, and I couldn't bear to see that happen without standing up for you. It was important to me to show you support, and not let anyone belittle you in such a manner." Just then, Hermione Granger said something that would haunt Harry for a long time. She said, "You should have gone into Gryffindor when you had the chance. You don't belong in Ravenclaw. You're too brave for your own good." The implication that he didn't belong in Ravenclaw stung, echoing in Harry's ears long after the conversation had ended. Despite his constant bravery, Hermione's words planted a seed of doubt, making him question his place in the magical world more than ever before. "And you're way too smart to be in Gryffindor," Harry said in turn as Patrick nodded in agreement, acknowledging the rare intellect his friend possessed. "But that's not the case, isn't it?" Harry continued, his tone slightly teasing, yet filled with genuine curiosity. Hermione glared at him, saying, "But you're supposed to be in Gryffindor. You're the boy who lived, the chosen one, the hero of the wizarding world. You don't belong with those nerdy Ravenclaws who care more about books than people." Little did anyone know that she had always envisioned him as a symbol of courage and valor, standing shoulder to shoulder with the lion-hearted students of Gryffindor, ready to face whatever challenges the magical realm threw their way as a united front. Harry's cheeks turned crimson with embarrassment as he looked at his companions, who were astonished by Hermione's claim that he wasn't in Ravenclaw. They were shocked given Harry's deliberate choice to join Ravenclaw over Gryffindor. The tension rose as Harry tried to make sense of the misunderstanding. "Maybe you don't belong in Gryffindor," Harry said coldly. "Maybe you're too afraid to challenge yourself, to learn new things, to think for yourself. Maybe you're just a follower who does whatever Dumbledore or McGonagall tells you to do." Hermione gasped, as if Harry had slapped her. She looked at him with a mix of hurt and disbelief. She opened her mouth to say something, but then closed it again. She turned around and ran away, tears streaming down her face. Ron Weasley glared at Harry before he turned around and walked away. Harry felt a sudden pang of guilt, but his strong self-control led him to justify his actions, convincing himself he was right and Hermione wrong. This self-righteousness clouded his morality, burying any doubts beneath layers of arrogance. Amid his internal struggle, Harry glanced at Patrick for reassurance. Patrick's supportive smile offered a brief sanctuary, easing Harry's turmoil temporarily, and providing a momentary respite from his moral doubts. "Don't let her get to you, Harry," Patrick said. "She was looking forward to seeing you and having you in Gryffindor along with her and Ron, but I tried to warn her that you're not like how everyone else thinks you're supposed to be. After all, you chose to go to Ravenclaw, which was what Dumbledore didn't want." Eleanor said, "So that's Hermione Granger, who's supposed to be the smartest witch here." "Never thought she'd be so awful," said Philip. "She'd make a perfect Slytherin with that attitude." "I don't know," said Harry. "The last thing we need here is a female version of Draco Malfoy, and he's not as bad as most people think." Unknown to them, Nicholas had been watching the confrontation between Harry and Hermione. He said, "Well, it appears that we've hit a little snag here." "Indeed," the voice of Severus Snape said as he glared at Harry. "I was so worried that Harry would be his father's son that I almost forgot that Harry is his mother's son. Yet I can't help but feel sorry for Miss Granger, as pathetic as she is. She should have known better than to speak to Harry in that way," said Nicholas. "In fact, she should be lucky that you weren't there to catch her as she said those awful things to Harry." "Not to worry, as I'm sure that Minerva can handle her," said Snape. "After all, she was once my headmistress, and she won't allow anyone to display such horrible behavior. Now, I must speak to young Master Potter and make him tell me what happened, as I'm sure that whatever he said was enough to make Miss Granger snap." When Harry, Philip, and Eleanor got to the library, Candace saw them and said, "Well, I heard that you met Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. She had said something about Harry that was pleasant. Or am I wrong?" "Well, she was very pleasant," and when I say pleasant, I mean that her outward demeanor masked a rather harsh personality, said Eleanor, stress evident in her voice. She had the audacity to tell Harry that he should have been sorted into Gryffindor instead of Ravenclaw, as if she knew him better than the sorting hat itself. She did that, said the young boy named Connor Matheson, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Well, typical Gryffindors, he continued, a slight teasing tone in his voice. They're never truly content unless they're challenging the status quo, or pushing the boundaries of what's considered normal. With a knowing grin, Connor added, it's just in their nature to seek out adventure and excitement, even if it means breaking a few rules along the way. But hey, that's what makes them stand out from the rest, right? I'm just glad I never went into Gryffindor, Harry said, a sense of relief evident in his voice as he looked around the room at his friends with a sheepish grin. Eleanor, always one to add a bit of humor to the conversation, chimed in, and so are we, as we all know that you would make a terrible Gryffindor. Her playful tone brought a collective chuckle from the group, each member imagining the mischievous Harry trying to fit into the brave and noble house of Gryffindor. Harry's gaze met Eleanor's, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes as he replied, true, I think I would have given Professor McGonagall quite the headache with my antics. The room filled with laughter, the camaraderie between friends strengthening as they shared this light-hearted moment. In that moment, Harry felt grateful for his friends who accepted him for who he was, house rivalry aside, knowing that their friendship transcended the boundaries of Hogwarts houses.